topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good afternoon, South Florida. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show where we bring you the top experts in the field of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Hey, this is a great show we have today. It's the first Thursday of the month. That means K. Bender Rimbaum. I must tell you, we get more letters from our listeners and our viewers just writing us, telling us how much they love this show. This is, of the 60 shows we do a month, this is the number one by far show, K. Bender Rimbaum for South Florida. They also have offices in Tampa and Orlando. I think it's the person who does the show, the attorney, Robert K. Good afternoon, Robert.
Hello, Steve. Hello, everybody.
You know, you better watch it. You're going to get a cult.
That's what I need.
People love your show. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Happy to be here.
No, but people really love your show and the way you educate the listeners. And that's what your firm is all about. I mean, when it comes to community association law, you are right there at the top. Tell people about K. Bender Rimbaum.
Well, K. Bender Rimbaum, since 1992, has been continuously providing services to community associations, starting off in Fort Lauderdale, where we now have offices in Pompano, Palm Beach Gardens, Orlando, and Tampa. We also have a meeting center in Miami on appointment. So we're covering a good portion of the state of Florida for community associations, condominiums, homeowner associations, cooperatives primarily. All aspects of what a day-to-day legal services might be needed, collection of unpaid assessments, interpretation of documents, providing opinions as to rights and responsibilities of the board and individual unit owners, dealing with covenant violations, contract negotiations with vendors, dealing with municipalities, anything that could come up on a day-to-day basis for a community association legally are the types of things that we provide such services. We have board certified specialists in both the community association arena and in construction defect litigation.
Well, there's many ways that you can reach us during the next hour. You can call in at 561-623-9429. We have a chat line that many of you go to. We will be more than happy to read your questions on the chat line. Or you can text us, which a lot of you do, at 954-336-3767. Looks like we've already got a board full of listeners and viewers. Let's go to our first question with Karen. How does grandfather in work on condos? No one has been following rules for years, so how do they begin to enforce all the rules?
Well, grandfathering in is a term that applies when dealing with enforcement type issues. As Karen has described, the community has not been enforcing its covenants and rules for a number of years and wants to begin again. The procedure that is used to do that is called republication. With republication, the board has to, at a meeting of the board, adopt the plan to do so by resolution, and then they have to send a letter to all the owners outlining the specific provisions of the documents that have not been enforced uniformly through the years that will begin again. And the grandfathering in aspect means that certain existing violations would have to be allowed to continue, because this republication is not something that allows for a retroactive application, meaning existing violations would also be subject to enforcement. This would only be for new violations that occur after the notice is sent to all of the owners. With the procedure, we typically recommend that the association also include a registration requirement on forms that the association will provide for anyone who is currently in the violating condition at the time of the notice, or the time that the notice indicates the enforcement will begin again, so that anyone who does not register would be considered a new violation and subject to enforcement. Once that procedure is adopted and in place, then the board would be able to uniformly enforce whatever provision, rule, or restriction that had not been enforced on a going forward basis. And those who register, they'd be allowed to remain until either they are no longer owners of the property, or if the condition is somehow no longer in effect.
I want to make sure we had several emails, people wanting to know the website, www.kbrlegal.com. That's www.kbrlegal.com. I promise you I will start sharing that with you throughout the show. And of course, we will talk about all the classes that are coming up. Let's go to Keith in Coral Springs. As secretary of an HOA, if I am unable to attend a special meeting called by the president, can I appoint someone to attend in my place?
Well, Keith, the answer to that is no. It's not up to you to make that appointment. If the association needs a secretary present for the meeting, the board can appoint an individual to act as a temporary secretary for that particular meeting, or an assistant secretary that would stand in if the secretary is not available. That would be the typical process that would be followed for that.
You know, Robert, we have been, last couple of weeks, we have been getting a lot of mail regarding new laws, which have not been signed by the governor, from what I understand.
Not yet.
But here is, yes. And from what I understand, it could be a whole show if he signs off on all of them.
Probably more than one.
Yes.
There's a lot of things this year.
Doug wants to know. Yes. Doug wants to know, did the Florida legislatures in the recent sessions pass any laws which would restrict a Florida condo or HOA association ability to restrict leasing of units or homes by members?
Well, that's not something that the legislature did in this most recent legislative session. It has been adopted for both condominiums and HOAs in the past. In condominiums back in 2004-ish, provisions were put in place that it restricts the ability of associations to amend their documents, restricting leasing unless the owners vote in favor of it, or for those who take title after it's in effect. And a similar provision was put in place in HOAs a couple of years ago. So nothing new this year, but leasing restrictions, those are already in place.
Well, from what I've heard, we don't know until the governor actually signs them, but there's a lot of new laws out there about more education, which you will love because that's what your firm does, is you devote a lot
Yeah,
of your time.
that's a big one, and it's a double-edged sword because it has been that board members had to be certified in order to qualify to serve. And to be certified, there were two ways. One would be to sign a form and put that in association records that you familiarize yourself with the documents and you would use your best ability to enforce them. Or you could take a course that the division had approved, and you could do that anytime a year prior to service or within 90 days after being elected. The new legislation is requiring 4 hours of mandatory education to qualify to serve on the board, and continuing education of at least 1 hour a year, depending on the size of in the HOA setting. 2,500 or less parcels is one amount, and over 2,500 has more time. HOAs, I believe, have a higher continuing education requirement than condominiums, but board members are going to be required to take these courses annually, or they won't be qualified to serve on the board anymore, and they'd have to be replaced. So that might lose a number of otherwise qualified volunteers.
Go ahead. Okay, let me go to Jerry. Jerry is in Orlando. He's very active on your show you do in Orlando, but he's calling on this show. He wants to know, can the board of directors be elected by proxy?
Well, is Jerry an HOA or a condo?
He didn't
if
say.
Jerry's in a
You know what?
condominium,
I know he's HOA.
in a condominium, the answer would be no. In a homeowner association, the answer is yes, depending on the provisions of your governing documents, whether or not they contain different provisions. The law allows for proxy voting for board members in homeowner associations, but the documents can be providing a different procedure if either originally or by amendment. So you'd have to check your documents on that.
Okay.
No changes on that.
Break, let's go over your schedule for April.
Okay. Well, there was an expo just yesterday in Broward, so hopefully people went to see that. On April the 9th from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Roberts Arena in Sarasota. The CAI West Coast chapter will have a trade show, and we'll be there at booth number 433. I don't think we have any teaching going on at that particular event. On April the 10th at the Palm Beach County Convention Center, we'll have another expo for condominiums, HOAs. We have a booth there. We're also teaching a class at 9:30, updating your governing documents. Jeff Rembaum will be there for that. And at 2:30, 2024 legal update will be presented by Allison Hertz. They're both out of the Palm Beach Gardens office. On April 12th at the Drive Shack in West Palm Beach at 8:30 a.m., hurricane preparation for community associations. There's continuing education. Peter Mullengarden from Palm Beach Gardens will be among the panelists and is hosted by ACE. On April 16th at 11:30 a.m., a Zoom webinar, guest restrictions and screening tenants and new owners. Kirsten Hentz of our Tampa office will be presenting that. On April 17th at noon, Castle Group will be having their monthly leadership series with the legislative update, and Michael Bender and Jeff Rembaum will be among the participants in that. That starts at noon on April 17th on Zoom. April 24th at Galuppi's in Pompano Beach, 7:30 in the morning. Another hurricane preparation for community association panel discussion. Lisa McGill from the Pompano office will be participating, also hosted by ACE. On April 26th at 11 a.m., we're going to have an HOA board member certification. Alan Schwartzide from our Orlando office will be presenting, and that's hosted by Century Management. Then on April 30th at 11:30 a.m., we'll do a condo board member certification, also Alan Schwartzide, also hosted by Century Management. And that's what's upcoming for April.
Busy month. That's the way you like it, though. We're going to go to break. We come back. We've got so many more of your questions. Give everybody the phone number that's good for all your locations, Robert.
All locations can be reached at 800-974-0680. You can write to us at info@kbrlegal.com, or you can go to our website, kbrlegal.com. On the first page, there's a box for contact information. Just fill that out, and someone will reach back to you.
We just got someone wants to know, will there be hurricane information on your website?
Hurricane information? In what respect? Does that mean that hurricanes are coming?
Preparing. Preparing.
There may be articles that are within Rembaum's Association Roundup or Legal Morsels that discuss those types of things. Hurricane preparation is more a physical issue than a legal one. Certainly you want to have photographic documentation of conditions before and after. If there's going to be any legal claims, protect all of your legal documents, put them in safe places, valuables. But most hurricane preparation is more for management than it is for legal, in my personal opinion.
See, you're the god of it all. Let's go to break. When we come back, we have more with attorney Robert Kay. We'll be right back.
K. Bender Rembaum is a full-service community association law firm dedicated to the representation of community associations throughout Florida. On kbrlegal.com, you can learn more about their offices in Pompano Beach, Palm Beach Gardens, Orlando, Tampa, as well as throughout Miami-Dade by appointment. Several K. Bender Rembaum attorneys are board-certified specialists in condominium and plan development law and assist clients with all matters of community association legal issues while keeping them up to date on new developments that affect their associations. K. Bender Rembaum is also a well-known provider of free legal education for managers and board members. Contact K. Bender Rembaum today by calling 800-974-0680. That's 800-974-0680 to reach any of their locations. You can also visit them online at kbrlegal.com or write to them at info@kbrlegal.com.
And we are back with the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV with your hosts, Steve-O, Sophia, and their expert guests.
We are back. This is the first Thursday of the month. That means K. Bender Rembaum. They are our longest standing expert since our show started 12 years ago. And we are so lucky to have them. They also do a show in our Tampa market, and they do one in our Orlando market. Both very, very busy shows, people wanting to participate in the shows. We have attorney Robert Kay with us asking your questions. You can go to our comment line, which a lot of people use, and I'm going to go to our next comment from Barry. If a condo waives the funding of its structural reserves for 2025, must the funding of the structural reserves begin in 2025 or 2026?
Well, if they're waived for 2025, which would have to be done before 2025 begins, that would mean they wouldn't begin until 2026. Although it's an open question whether that's going to be something that can be done, because the intent of the legislation is that certain things cannot be waived after 2025. But the way the statute's written, it creates a potential for interpretation in different ways. So I don't know. It's likely going to take a court decision for that to be resolved. I don't think the legislature is going to fix it before that happens.
Okay, let's go to Arnold in Boca. He said, I live in a community where 16 of us are landowners. The rest of the residents are not. We have a landowner's fee that we pay every month to use the amenities. The increase was voted on February 21st, but the corporate owner made it retroactive to January. Is that legal?
That's something, unfortunately, that would be a document-specific issue. So without the documents available to me, I don't think I can give a very complete response to that. I think that in all likelihood it would be legal, but without seeing the documents, it's something that I would want to reserve judgment
Have
on.
to check your docs, right?
Yep.
Okay. Greg in Boynton, I'm the chairman of the Rules and Regulations Committee of my condo. Do we need minutes of committed meetings, and do they become official record?
Yes, the committee meetings in the condominium will have to be noticed if a majority of the committee meeting members are going to be there. And minutes are supposed to be kept, and they become part of the official records of the association.
Okay. Sorry for the delay here. Hard reading some of these. Larry and Davy, can you recall right after an election?
Well, there's a 60-day window on both sides of the election, and during which time recalls are not going to be accepted. So while you can undertake the collection of recall agreements among the owners if they're interested within that time frame, you cannot present it until after the 60 days.
Okay. Connor in Deerfield, our board realized we don't have enough money for a previous loan. Do we pass a special assessment? Can we pull it from our reserves?
The special assessment is most likely what they need to do. Reserves, unless you get a vote of the owners, have to be used for the purpose for which they're being held. And given upcoming changes in the statute, that might be something that might not be available to the association. Reserves are something that they should stay away from if possible, but they must have been out of budget over some of the time to not have the money to pay back the loan. So a special assessment would likely be their likely approach.
Okay. Sherry and Boca Raton, can I sue my HOA or condominium association for negligence in Florida?
If it's a bona fide claim and they were negligent, yes, that happens quite regularly in Florida. Yes.
So I guess do you have to know what the negligence is even? I mean, so you're saying people can sue their HO or condominium association if they feel like there's negligence?
They can. There's typically insurance in place. And insurance does cover the association for negligence claims. It will provide a defense, and in many of the instances will provide a dollar coverage for the claim. Sometimes it's just a defense, but it depends on the circumstances and the insurance policy of the association. But when you're suing your own association, bear in mind you're suing yourself because you're a member of that corporation that you're suing.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Robert, I wondered, do people read their documents? I mean, we get a lot of questions. Here's one from Kyle in Aventura. Is my HOA condominium association responsible for repairing damage to my home? I would think that
that's another document.
If they read
that's another document-specific issue, as you've identified. And it's not entirely clear because you use the word condo and HOA. So in condominiums, right, the maintenance requirements are generally spelled out. Well, actually, both of them are, but condominiums do more than HOAs on the property of the individual owner. So that is an item that he's going to have to look at his own governing documents. He may need to consult with an attorney that understands or is familiar with this area of the law if it's not clear to him, or can make an inquiry of the board and see what response you get.
Okay. Greg in Pompano wants to know, are there any records of the association that should not be accessible to unit owners?
There are, and they're spelled out in both the condominium statute and in the HOA statute of what would not be included. They involve things such as applications for sale and lease, information relating to that, communications with the association attorney that are privileged, matters involving, there's a whole list of them. Off the top of my head, I'm not coming up with all of them, but if you look into the provisions of the statute as it addresses official records, 718.111 subsection 12, in 720, I believe it's in 303, will spell out the specific exceptions as to what records should not be made available.
Okay, let's go to Doug. Assuming our governing documents are silent, can you lawfully pay for a reserve study from your reserve funds, or must it be paid from our operating budget?
Reserve funds are to be used for what you're specifically reserving them for, and a reserve study would not be what those are. If you have a roof reserve, then it's for repairs to the roof or replacement of the roof. It's not for a study to tell you how long the life of your roof will be. Those would come from your general operating funds.
Okay, let's go to Kelly. Is the violation letters open to the membership to view? Is the ARC approval open for the membership to view?
Violation letters would be open to the membership to view if the matter's not already in litigation and in the hands of the association attorney. If they're just violation letters, they're part of the official records of the association, but once litigation happens, then it takes a different form and becomes evidence and tied to the litigation that would be kept not open to viewing until the litigation is resolved. ARC approvals are something that should be part of the official records and open for inspection and copying by any requesting owner.
Okay, staying with our chat line, Stephen wants to know, what if a board president attempts to falsify remaining useful life for windows and ASERs? Is there a practical way to prosecute this besides litigation, which is very expensive?
I suspect the division is not going to take a very positive response to, sorry, Jeff, accident. Is not going to take a positive view to falsifications of useful life windows in the ASERs. And I'm not sure how the board president would be able to accomplish that without involving the experts that they've hired to provide that information. And I can't imagine the experts working in this area jeopardizing everything for something such as that. The possibility of that occurring, while it exists, it seems to be not that likely. But if the division doesn't involve itself in that issue, or is unable to involve itself in that issue, then unfortunately litigation is the only approach that would be available. And yes, it is expensive, and it does take significant evidence in order to bring legal action of that type to contradict what is already in the association records on these valuations.
Reed in Lake Clark Shores, can a condominium association restrict the sale or rental of a condo unit?
Well, that's another document issue. The answer is yes, if your documents do provide for that. Quite often the documents will provide for the need to submit application and qualify within the guidelines of what the community applies to those things. Sometimes there's a limitation on the total number of units or parcels that can be leased at any one time, and it may or may not be already crossed, so that owners would have to go on a waiting list under those circumstances, or it may be unrestricted. So that's something you got to look at your documents to get the complete answer on.
We just got a text in from a viewer, longtime viewer, who wants to know, why do condos charge for elevators?
Charge for elevators?
Yes, use of it. She's on the third floor and she has to pay an extra fee for the elevator.
That's a new one. I've never seen that happen in a condominium. I don't know that that's something that would pass legal muster, depending on how the documents are written and the way the community is developed. If each floor is a separate unit and it's secured and accessible only by the individual owners there, well, there's a possibility that there's some added charge in the documents that can be applicable. But since I've been doing this, I've never run across a condominium that has a charge for elevator use. Well, so that would be an interesting one to hear more about.
Well, here's a question that just came in on our chat from Doug. Can the required 5-year load rest for our condo's elevator be paid from our reserve fund, or must it, hold on, just changed on me, must we pay for it from our operating budget?
If you have reserves for the elevator, And this is an expense related to the elevator of a maintenance nature, then reserves for elevator would be appropriate. Do you have to use reserves? No. But if you have reserves and choose to, that should be an acceptable use of them. But then you're going to have to recalculate on a going forward basis, since you've used some, what your needs are going to be.
And, we really do appreciate all your questions come in. If you can, let us know if you're an HOA or a condo, because it does make a difference. Here's Kelly, HOA, notice to correct. The board may, but shall not be required to provide notice demanding that the repair be corrected. The association may contract to have the work performed. Explain may.
Well, when these documents were written, may meant something different than they mean now under the law, which is interesting. In this particular topic, many documents provide that if the owner doesn't maintain something on their property that they're supposed to maintain, the association would have an option, which the may would show you as permissive, and they can exercise it or not, to demand that the owner do the work and take them to court, or they can choose to do it themselves. What's happened is that courts have decided that when there's a provision of what we call self-help in your documents, where the association has the ability in the documents to enter the property and correct a defective condition that exists that should be the owner's to fix, the association has to attempt to do that first before it can go to litigation. The court decided, well, that's an adequate remedy, and when you go to litigation, you're going for an injunction, and one of the requirements to get an injunction is that there's no adequate remedy at law. It's questionable, the logic of that, because documents express it differently, but that's the current status of the case law in Florida. So while it came out of the 2nd District, which is on the west coast of Florida, until there's something different in any of the other districts, it becomes the law of Florida. So that's no longer a may in that situation. The association has to make the attempt. Now, if the owner stops the association or objects to the association doing that, that would be sufficient for the association to then move the matter into litigation, and they've done what they could to try and fix it themselves. Now they don't have a choice, and litigation is appropriate. That's a good question.
George in Boca wants to know, first of all, he said, love your show. Does an association have to carry insurance on the condominium property?
Yes, the condominium association is required to make best efforts to secure adequate insurance. And adequate insurance is viewed to be full replacement value of all of the items that the insurance would cover. And that's becoming increasingly difficult for condominiums across Florida, as we all know, with the cost of insurance getting very much out of reach and creating significant financial hardship. But the statutes have not been adjusted to, in fact, the legislature seems to be more inclined to require the association to have such in place than provide for opportunities for them to not. So the short answer is yes, they have to have insurance.
Candy in Delray Beach, can an association purchase a unit in the condominium that has been foreclosed on?
Yes, that's something the association can do. Typically, that occurs if the association is foreclosing and they're bidding at their own sale. That often happens when there's mortgages on the property and there's not a lot of equity. The association would likely be the one to take title. The statute expressly authorizes the association to acquire its own units.
I promised everybody the last show that we would repeat your classes. So let's do the classes one more time before we leave.
Okay. April 9th from 8 to 4, we have a CAI West Coast Chapter Trade Show at the Roberts Arena in Sarasota. We are at booth 433 if anybody wants to stop by. April 10th, Palm Beach County Convention Center, the Condo and HOA Expo. We are at booth 216. We're also presenting 2 classes at the Expo. At 9:30, Updating Your Governing Documents, Jeff Rembaum. 2:30, 2024 Legal Update from Allison Hertz. They're both from our Palm Beach Gardens office. On April 12th at the Drive Shack at West Palm Beach at 8:30 a.m., there's a presentation on hurricane preparation for community associations. There's also a hot breakfast, so that's a good draw. Peter Mollengarden of our Palm Beach Gardens office will be among the panelists. It's hosted by ACE. April 16th at 11:30, there's a Zoom webinar, Guest Restrictions and Screening of Tenants and New Owners. Kirsten Hens from our Tampa office will be presenting that. 11:30 a.m., April 16th. April 17th at noon, Castle Group is hosting a leadership series with a legislative update. The guests will include Michael Bender and Jeff Rembaum. It usually runs for about an hour, a little bit more by Zoom. April 24th at Galuppi's in Pompano Beach at 7:30 a.m. Another hurricane preparation presentation for community associations. Lisa McGill from our Pompano office will be among the panelists, and that's hosted by ACE. On April 26th at 11 a.m., a Zoom presentation, HOA board member certification. Alan Schwartzide from the Orlando office will present, hosted by Century Management. And then on April 30th at 11:30 a.m., another Zoom presentation, a condominium board member certification. Alan Schwartzide will present that as well from the Orlando office, again hosted by Century Management. You go to our website at kbrlegal.com, click on the calendar, choose the event that you're interested in, and then you can establish your credentials for participating in the Zoom items or reserve your spot for the ones that are live. Most of these are Zoom.
Robert, we get so many letters from people who either watch the show or listen to the show. And once in a while, we get a letter that I love the letter. And I got to read this one on air. This is from our chat line. This is from Doug. Doug, I hope you don't mind me reading this over the air. It says, your program is a tremendous public service, providing information in an understandable manner for laypersons, for which I am most grateful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Doug. It's our pleasure to do that.
That makes
we
it
appreciate
worth it, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah,
we appreciate your gratitude.
Well, Kay Bender, one of the top community association law firms in the state of Florida. This is what your customer service is impeccable. You're always out there going the extra mile. You do this show with us once a month for an hour, and that's a long time to sit and answer questions. We just so appreciate you. And thank you, Doug, for that great, great letter. Let's tell everybody how they can reach your office.
I can call at 800-974-0680. You can write to us at info@kbrlegal.com, or you can go to the website, kbrlegal.com. On the opening page, there's a contact box for you to fill out. Give us the information indicated, and we'll get back to you. It's usually within a day.
Well, I have a feeling that your next show next month, some of these laws will be passed by or signed off on by the governor, and that'll be good.
I don't know. The governor's got a little longer than next month to sign off. Most of these aren't effective till July. There's a window of opportunity that he has. I believe it's 60 days from when it's presented to him. I don't know that any have actually reached his desk yet. I haven't checked on that. But, some of them are for July, some of it's October, some of it's January of next year. So there's all sorts of deadlines out there that are upcoming. We will be publishing, and that'll be available on our website at Rembaum's Association Roundup, an analysis of, or a synopsis of the high and low points of what the legislature has done this year. This year's been one of the most of at least changes that we've seen in a number of years. And a lot of them are fairly substantial. A lot of them you're saying, why do they need to do that? There's some questionable things that were done on homeowner association provisions, which may not pass constitutional muster, but it is what it is at the moment. Somebody's going to have to make that challenge if they're of a mind to do that. Telling associations you can't enforce against vehicles that are on your property that your documents clearly prohibit, which seems to be a big constitutional problem, that the state's not supposed to involve itself in an existing contract, and they're doing exactly that. So that's just one item that comes to mind. There's a few others. So more on that down the road.
Yes. Robert, thank you so much. We will see you soon.
All right. Have a great April.
That is Robert K. He's a senior partner with K. Bender Rembaum. That's it for us today. We'll be back again with you next week with more Ask the Experts.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.